This isn't right. You know it, and I know it.
7 judges who faced the same sentences they gave to criminals. Imagine the very people who sentenced criminals standing in the same handcuffs. In the halls of justice, judges are seen as the ultimate arbiters of right and wrong. They wield the power to determine the fate of those who stand before them. But what happens when these very judges cross the line and find themselves on the other side of the bench and crash straight into the prison cells they once filled? You're about to witness 7 shocking tales of judges who got a taste of their own justice. Judge Lance Mason, the fall no one saw coming. He was a rising political star, a former Ohio judge and state senator. But behind closed doors, Lance Mason was a monster. He was charged in a serious domestic case involving his wife that left the public stunned. And all of this took place in front of their children. All right, calm down, so you can get some help. Okay. Aisha Mason, 911 checker. Police emergency. Yes, my husband just beat me and threw me out of the car. He has my 2 daughters in the car. Where are you at? Van Aken Boulevard. Yeah, and like Avalon. He just threw me out of the car. Orange Saturn View, 2008. I'm afraid he's going to hurt my daughters. Is he with you now, or did he drive off? He drove off. Which way on Van Aken? He went, going down towards the police station. He probably hit your grid. Okay. Yeah, somebody else called about that. Where are you calling? What's your phone number? Where would you call? They're taking me to South Point now. Who's taking you to South Point? Some nice people in the car. I stopped, I jumped in. Are you in the car now? In another person's car. Please find my kids. Are you injured? Yes. I need some air. That's what I think. Yeah. Ma'am, what's your first name? Aisha. Aisha. Okay. Can you tell that driver just to stop where you're at? We're going to have the squad meet you. Oh, okay. An officer. Okay. So, where are you going to be pulling over at? We're at this church, St. Dominic Lutheran Church. No, St. Peter's Lutheran Church. What is this? They have the flashers on. This is the last. What kind of car is this? Mercedes. A black Mercedes. Yes. Did you find a Saturn View? Should be in a black Mercedes with their flashers on. Van Ingleside. I'm calling the squad now. They're here. Did you find the Saturn View? Are you with an officer, ma'am? Yeah, they just pulled up. Did you find the Saturn View? Did you find my kids? I'm here to be punished today for what I did to my wife and my children. I take the crimes I committed against my wife and my children. I have no excuses. I beat my wife in front of my kids and put them into harm. He was convicted and served 9 months in prison. But the story doesn't end there. After his release, Mason was given a city job, a second chance. But in 2018, he was involved in a tragic and fatal incident with his wife while their children were home. In November 2018, tragedy struck. Aisha Fraser was found deceased outside a residence in Shaker Heights. Authorities were alerted by a 911 call from Mason's sister, who reported a violent incident involving her brother. Mason was apprehended at the scene and taken into custody. During his arrest, Mason attempted to flee, resulting in a collision with a police vehicle and injuries to an officer. He was charged with multiple offenses. In August 2019, Mason pleaded guilty to the charges, expressing a desire to take responsibility and avoid further trauma to his family. I can't say or articulate how sorry I am about all the pain that I've caused, and I'm aware of it. She was a beautiful person, and the world certainly is a better place for her in it. I also want to apologize and ask forgiveness to Mr. Flynn's family and the Shaker Heights Police Department. It's a community that I grew up in, I served, and a community I loved. I'm not making any excuses. I know what I've done is indefensible. I accept full responsibility for it. I'm ashamed. I know it's a betrayal of my faith and my belief. And I failed my daughters. Every day I live, I know that my daughters will live without their mother and their father. And that tears me apart. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving a minimum of 35 years. A man who once claimed to protect the law became the embodiment of evil. Former Arkansas Judge Daniel Arthur Stewart, once a respected figure in the legal community, experienced a dramatic fall from grace due to serious criminal conduct. Stewart, who had served as a county judge, prosecutor, and criminal defense attorney, was sentenced to 84 months in federal prison for possession of illegal material involving minors. Following his prison term, he is subject to 10 years of supervised release with no possibility of parole. The case against Stewart began with a federal indictment back in 2019 tied to inappropriate online behavior involving a minor. The investigation revealed disturbing conduct that dated back to early 2016. After years of legal proceedings, Stewart ultimately pleaded guilty in 2023 to charges related to the possession of unlawful and exploitative digital material. It was a shocking revelation, one that not only ended his career, but shattered the image of a man once trusted to uphold the law. Here's the irony. He once told a defendant, "You need to learn responsibility." Now he had to swallow those very words. Judge Tracy Hunter, from prosecutor to prisoner. She was Ohio's first African-American juvenile court judge. Respected, powerful, bold, but in 2014, Judge Tracy Hunter was convicted of a felony, unlawful interest in a public contract. She gave confidential documents to her brother, a juvenile court employee under investigation. Her sentence was 6 months in jail, but it took 5 years of court battles before she was actually jailed. She was dragged from court in tears as protesters screamed in outrage. Some call her a criminal, others call her a victim of politics and race. In 2020, amid COVID risks, Hunter was released early after serving 75 days. To this day, she proclaims her innocence, and many say her sentence was harsher than others who committed worse. Judge Constance Briscoe, the author of her own downfall. She wrote books about surviving abuse. She was the UK's first black female judge, a symbol of triumph until the lies unraveled. Briscoe lied to police, tampered with evidence, and provided false documents during a high-profile political scandal involving former MP Chris Huhn. When exposed, the irony was brutal. She was stripped of her title and sentenced to 16 months in prison. Briscoe, who once judged liars, became one. And unlike her courtroom, there was no room for fiction. Judge Jack Camp, an esteemed federal judge from Georgia, a Vietnam veteran, a man who looked the part of justice. But behind the robe, Camp was living a double life. He was caught purchasing illegal substances while spending time with a woman he had a personal relationship with. To make matters worse, he brought along a government-issued firearm during these transactions. This wasn't just hypocrisy, it was a national embarrassment. A veteran federal judge in Georgia has pleaded guilty to 2 drug-related charges. Judge Jack Camp was arrested on charges that he bought and used drugs with a stripper from an Atlanta club. Even though he knew she was a convicted felon, it turned out that the stripper was secretly cooperating with authorities. He deeply regrets the recent circumstances, as he said from the podium today. As part of the plea deal, Camp also resigned from the bench and agreed to cooperate with authorities looking into any of the cases he handled while he was being investigated. Camp resigned in disgrace and was sentenced to 30 days in prison, community service, and a year of probation, a light sentence, but the stain on his name is permanent. Judge Marcus Unsolved, Australia's greatest legal fall. He was once one of Australia's most respected judges. Marcus Unsolved was a former federal court judge, celebrated for his intellect and integrity. But in 2006, he received a speeding ticket. He could have paid the $77 fine, but instead, he lied under oath, claiming a friend was driving his car. The problem was that the friend had been dead for 3 years. His elaborate lie spiraled, leading to multiple counts of perjury and misleading the court. Unsolved was sentenced to 2 years in prison and served about 18 months before release. The disgraced former federal court Judge Marcus Unsolved is a free man. The 72-year-old walked from Sydney's Silverwater jail this morning, having served 2 years of a 3-year sentence for lying about a $77 speeding fine. Unsolved expressed his regret and thanks. He says he now wants to return to charity work. 2 years to the day, Marcus Unsolved walked free, tired, pale, but good-humored. This is not my most beautiful. But the 72-year-old had his words carefully prepared. Words of thanks and contrition for his supporters and friends. I'm desperately sorry for letting them and the community down so badly. I've certainly learned a very painful lesson. Australia was stunned. The man who helped write the law broke it for the price of a dinner. Judge Mark Ciavarella and Judge Michael Conahan operated one of the most disturbing judicial scandals in American history, dubbed Kids for Cash. The Kids for Cash scandal is one of the most disturbing examples of systemic judicial corruption in American history, shaking public trust in the juvenile justice system to its core. At the center of this scandal were Judges Mark Ciavarella and Michael Conahan of Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, who were accused and convicted of accepting millions of dollars in illegal payments in exchange for sending juveniles to privately owned for-profit detention centers, regardless of the severity or triviality of the offenses committed. The scandal spanned from the early 2000s to around 2008. Conahan, then the president judge, used his influence to shut down the county-run juvenile detention center and approve contracts with PA Child Care and its sister facility, Western PA Child Care, which were both privately owned. These centers then funneled money to Conahan and Ciavarella, often through shell companies and concealed transactions. The judges allegedly received $2.8 million in kickbacks. Judge Ciavarella ran his courtroom with an iron fist, doling out harsh sentences to juveniles, often for minor infractions such as truancy, online insults to school staff, or petty theft. Many of these children had no legal representation and were rushed through court proceedings in mere minutes, then hauled off to private detention centers where the companies profited based on occupancy rates. When the scheme was uncovered, it caused widespread outrage. The kids that were affected by Ciavarella, the people who were affected by him, they aren't mad because he took money. That's salt in the wound. What we're mad about is that he hurt us. Nearly 3,000 juvenile convictions handed down by Ciavarella between 2003 and 2008 were overturned. Many of these young people had already served time and suffered long-term emotional and psychological trauma. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court eventually declared that Ciavarella had violated the constitutional rights of these juveniles by denying them fair hearings. My kid's not here anymore. My kid's not here. He's dead because of him. He ruined my life. I'd like him to go to hell and rot there forever. Come on. No. You know what he told everybody in court? They need to be held accountable for their actions. You need to be. Do you remember me? Do you remember me? Remember my son, an all-star wrestler? He's gone. He's shot through the heart. You scumbag. You ruined my life. Somebody better do something with him. He's going home. Are you kidding me? In 2011, Ciavarella was convicted on 12 counts, including racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy, and sentenced to 28 years in federal prison. Conahan, who cooperated with authorities and took a plea deal, was sentenced to 17.5 years. In 2020, during the height of the pandemic, Michael Conahan was quietly released from federal prison to home confinement as part of a broader effort by the Federal Bureau of Prisons to reduce the spread of the virus in overcrowded facilities. His release was allowed under the CARES Act, a COVID relief bill signed under President Trump, but its implementation continued under President Joe Biden in 2021. Breaking news coming out of Luzerne County today. President Biden commuted the sentence of disgraced Luzerne County kids for cash, Judge Michael Conahan. Joe Biden's announcement that he'd be pardoning his embattled son, Hunter, surprised many people. But he also commuted the sentence of a now former judge who received $2.8 million in kickbacks to jail 2,300 children, some as young as 8. While the release was technically legal and procedural, it ignited a firestorm of controversy, especially among the families of affected juveniles and civil rights advocates. And I just feel like it's political. You know, politics as usual around here. What is Joe Biden doing for all of these kids that absolutely got nothing and almost no justice from this whole thing that happened? So, it's nothing for us. But it seems that Conahan is just getting a slap on the wrist every which way he possibly could. Still today, the White House released a statement on the commutation for nonviolent offenders, which read in part, "These commutation recipients who were placed on home confinement during the COVID pandemic have successfully reintegrated into their families and communities and have shown that they deserve a second chance." But Laura says she and other juveniles were never given a second chance. There's never going to be any closure for us. There's never going to be somehow, someway. These two men are always going to pop up. But now, when you think about a president of the United States letting him get away with this, it makes you not even want to live in this country at this point. That is totally sickening. I just can't even believe this. Critics accuse the system of again favoring the powerful and well-connected. Some of the concerns voiced by the public and commentators included a lack of transparency in the release process. There was the irony that a man who devastated countless young lives was allowed to return home, while some of his victims continued to suffer the lifelong consequences of their wrongful incarcerations. There was the perceived leniency shown to white-collar criminals in contrast to nonviolent drug offenders and marginalized individuals still serving full sentences. The Biden administration did not directly order or intervene in Conahan's release, but the Federal Bureau of Prisons operates under the Department of Justice, which is part of the executive branch, making the optics politically controversial. The scandal triggered major reforms in Pennsylvania's juvenile justice system. Juvenile court procedures were overhauled to ensure children have access to legal counsel. Detention for minor offenses was restricted. The zero-tolerance policies in schools were reevaluated. There was a renewed public and academic discussion about the dangers of privatizing prisons, especially juvenile facilities. The Kids for Cash scandal remains a haunting example of how greed and corruption can upend lives, especially the most vulnerable children. The release of Michael Conahan, while legally justifiable on paper, reawakened the trauma for many families, and is a reminder of the ongoing need for accountability, reform, and vigilance in the American justice system. In every courtroom, the judge's word is final. But as you've seen, even they can fall. Power doesn't protect you from consequences. In fact, when judges break the law, it shakes the very system they swore to uphold. Which story shocked you the most? Are there more judges out there who deserve to be on this list? Comment below. And if you found this video insightful, support the channel by watching the next video on your screen. I'll see you there.